of the night's home weekends will celebrate Jackie Robinson and all of the players of the Negro Leagues. Charlotte was home to many black men and women who fundamentally changed America's pastime. And down on the field, Queen City News reporter Savannah Rudisell live at Truist Field with a further look. You also have a friend back there, but we're talking about legacies. I know Homer has one too.
Of course, Julian, right? So there's so many fun things, right, about the Negro Leagues and about the Knights games here that there's a lot of people who are looking to introduce, right, to the younger generation. We're talking history as far back as 1890 here in Charlotte, sometime when dragons might have been around necessarily, maybe. Possibly. But there's so many stories here that Homer, I know, would love to hear, and they got a lot of young fans that would love to hear. Here are some of the people who are trying to keep them alive.
At the end of the day, with integration, without it, you know, that's all they wanted to do was play baseball and show their talent.
To know the game is to love it. That's how local historian Michael Webb sees baseball, particularly its Negro League roots. His research unearthed some little-known stories of the Carolinas' connection to the sport.
The New York Giants played an exhibition game with the Charlotte Red Sox. And the New York Giants that year in 1921 would go on to win the World Series. And this exhibition game took place at Johnson C. Smith University, at the time known as Biddle University.
Part of Webb's work involves bringing former Negro League players' stories to light, even though some of them never embraced their legacy as a pro athlete. That includes Belmont's very own Carl Forney.
None of his kids knew that he played professional baseball until they became adults. And then they would always ask, "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" And Mr. Forney would be like, you know, it was never something I thought to mention.
Webb's research also brought him to Eddie Gigi Burton and wife Gail.
He was just so funny. He kept me laughing all the time. He was so interesting. It took me many years before I knew he was a Negro Leaguer.
Gail didn't learn about this part of Eddie's life until his former team, the Harrisburg Giants, wanted to honor him.
One thing about Eddie also is that it was never really about him. It was always about the team, the game, you know, the sport.
Eddie organized celebrations and memorials for other former players before his death in 2018. His friendship with Webb started about a decade before he passed, and Eddie was able to pass on memories of playing with greats of the game when he was just 16 years old.
He did play with Josh Gibson. He played with Satchel Paige and Roy Campanella. But the stories they would tell.
Not every story centered on the love of the game.
He would go into a town and he would see a lynching. And then that same day they would go on to play a baseball game, and these same white men would go to the game cheering them on.
Gail applauds the efforts of people like Webb and the Knights organization, honoring the past while inspiring future players and fans.
And if people don't know the trauma and the drama of what happened to Negroes through sports, politics, life, you know, to me, I think that this is an opportunity when we celebrate these entities, is an opportunity to just let the world know that it happened and get over it. But you just can't erase it.
She says to know the history, to know the players, to know the league is to love it.
I think the world's a better place because Eddie was in it.
So one of Gail's next big projects is she'd really like to set up a foundation for some younger students, especially some scholar athletes, and introduce more athletes of color to the game.
That's amazing because I think for a lot of young kids, boys, girls growing up, you really look for someone you identify and relate to.
Of course,
and
yeah.
when you have these stories that become kind of more front and center, that kind of gives you the motivation to get moving forward.
Yeah, it really does, right? You've got your own icon.
Yeah.